Jenna Rhoads in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the heat. How are you, Jenna?
Hot.
Hot. Yeah, it's May of 2023, so it's only going to get hotter, right?
Yep, only going to get
Nice.
hotter.
Nice. Are you born and raised in Las Vegas?
I am born and raised. I even went to the old Las Vegas high school. You can't get more born and raised than that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Nice. And
Mhm.
did you meet your husband there, or?
No, my husband and I got set up on a blind date. His sister was my maid leader when I was 15, and she was just this young, cute leader. And he came to work in Vegas for the summer, and all the young women were like, "Who's that?" And
Uh-huh.
anyways, we stayed friends, and through a series of like running into her years later, she's like, "Oh, my brother's on his mission. You should write to him," and this whole thing. And so we got set up when he got home, and we got married. We got
Wow.
engaged in like 3.5 months and married 4 months later. So by the time we got married, we'd known each other for 7.5 months. So
Oh, my goodness. Well,
yeah,
it
so
was meant to be,
she
so you might
picked
as well
me.
jump in.
Yeah, yeah, she picked
So
me. So
that's awesome. Now,
yeah.
you, I forget how I found you online. I think, I'll reach out to various people on Instagram and invite them to
Mm-hmm.
do what's called an Instagram takeover, where you log into the Instagram account for Leading Saints and take a couple days and talk about your calling. And you did such a great job with this,
Oh, thanks.
introducing us to your stake president, your bishop. Is your husband the bishop, or is he in the bishopric?
He's in the bishopric.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we just got a real good feel for your stake and some events
Awesome.
happening there. So if people want to check that out, it should be in the highlight bubble on
Okay.
Instagram. If
Okay.
you don't know what that is, you're probably not using Instagram. So, but and you can get a literal tour of Jenna's calling, right?
The
So
East Stake. Yeah, yeah.
that's right. So maybe just tell us the church is pretty awesome there in Las Vegas, but just give us the lay of the land. What's your ward and stake like?
So you're right. The church is really awesome here. Um, I actually live in the stake I grew up in. I know it's kind of rare, but me and my parents and my sisters, we all ended up staying on the east side of Las Vegas, and it's kind of because Vegas like started in the middle and then grew out, and so we're close to downtown. Like if anybody's familiar, we're close to Fremont Street. That's even in our stake boundaries.
Hmm.
So our stake is kind of old, and we have like several families of people that have been here forever. And then, so it was like, there was some challenges growing up in the East Stake and then growing into an adult in the East Stake because everyone remembered me as a teenager,
Oh
that
yeah.
crazy redhead girl, and just like, but we have like some of the best people. And when everybody moves away from the East Stake, they always say, "Oh, I miss the East Stake," when they move across town or whatever. So I've been in the stake forever. We have a lot of really great people. Our stake presidency, it's kind of interesting as you get older. And if you've been in the stake forever, our stake presidency is all three of them are good friends of mine that we've all been in the stake forever and we're all around the same age. So, it
Cool.
reminds me I'm getting older, but
Yeah.
it actually is kind of cool because I have a lot of resources in my stake and I'm not afraid to ask for help. And so that made this calling actually pretty easy for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you are the stake activities director. Is that the right title?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously every stake has some activities, but generally they'll call people to like be in charge of activity, or a high councilman is sort of directing the events and whatnot. So I don't know if this is a typical calling in the stake. I mean, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. So this is what happened. So the history of me is that I'm a diehard girls camper. I die over girls camp. Like I've missed maybe 4 years since I was 12. So no matter what calling I'm in, I'm always like, you can give me that calling if I can still go to girls camp. And
Awesome.
so
Yeah.
like, I love young women's, I love girls camp. So when they called me in, they were like, okay, we have a special calling for you. And it was right after COVID, and our state president was new, and he said he just really felt like we needed to gather the saints again. Like that was really important to them as the stake presidency. And he said we need to get people out of their houses, out of their funk, and we need to get to gathering again. So this is what we want you to do, because he knows too, they all three know that I love a good party. I love to
Uh-huh.
hang out. I love, so if I could plan a calling for myself, this would be a calling for
Awesome.
me. And so they were like, maybe bring back church sports or like primary sports or whatever. You just kind of go pray about it and think about it. And I was like, okay, church sports. I was like, well, I don't know, because like most families, if their kids are in sports, they're already doing that and they're very busy. And so I don't know, I tossed some ideas around. My husband and I tossed some ideas around. And so then we came up with First Friday. And, in Vegas down on Fremont Street, they have a First Friday, or they did before COVID, where it's like a Friday night music, food, hanging out, vendors, go down, do all the stuff down there and just hang out. And my husband's a cop, so he has a love-hate relationship with First Friday because it's always like garbage going on, but it's also a cool thing. But he said, what about the consistency of First Friday? If you do an activity on the first Friday of every month, then everybody knows when it is. It's on their calendar. Anyways, when I took it to stake reporting meeting, the stake president's eyes, he just got really big, like, oh, that's so cool. And then he's like, maybe we could incorporate like church sports into First Friday occasionally, or service projects, or, the ideas just kept growing.
So let me ask, like, anybody in Vegas would know if you said First Friday, they know what that is, right?
They should. Yeah. I've
advertised you introduced it on a church level and as an activity, and they're like, oh yeah. And basically every First Friday something happens.
Yeah. And and then I was like, okay, can I choose my committee? And they were like, yeah, you can choose.
The negotiation begins.
Yeah. Right? And so I went through the whole stake list, and I kind of tried to pick some people that I know are awesome, but maybe aren't the first like people to say, hey, I'll be in that, I'll do that. I mean, one of which was my cousin.
Nice.
And I called his wife. I was like, do you guys think you'd want to be on this committee? And she goes, well, you're your cousin's favorite person besides me, so you call him and ask him. And then I just asked some friends of mine and just some people that I knew we would work well together. So it was twofold for me. I wanted a good experience for my committee. I wanted to work well together. And then I wanted to try and like plan some things that appealed to all the different people in the stake. So
yeah. And so how long ago did you have your first Friday?
So we had our first one last year in February, and I got called 2 weeks before the first Friday in February. And so I said to the stake president, I was like, look, I think we can do this. I think we can throw it together. Let's get going on this so we don't miss a whole nother month. And he was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? I was like, well, let's make it fun. Let's make it like, yay, everybody's gathering again. So I go, what about if we have a DJ, we have music, we have dancing, we have a taco truck? It's just like, come and hang out. He was like, I love it. Get it going. So, and that was the other thing is like, I know that some people don't feel like they have the support of their leaders in their callings, but they let me run with it. And I also me and my committee, we weren't trying to be like overly spendy either. The first one, we spent on a DJ and we spent on a taco truck, and we planned on, I think, 250 people because our state's kind of small. There's only like, I think 6 wards. And when I was a kid, there was like 10 wards, and it's just gotten smaller, And we had 450 people show up.
Wow.
And the taco truck lady just stretched the food. And it was like loaves and fishes. And everybody was like so happy to see each other. And it was a blast.
Nice. And so I am curious about just because you hit the nail on the head as far as people think, well, my stake presidency would never do that, or they try to micromanage it, or they wouldn't give me enough budget, or so. Like, how would you articulate just how that worked? Did they give you just a lump sum of money for the year? How did you work through the details so that you could feel like you had the autonomy to run with it?
Well, one of the things that's really helpful is that our stake president is a business owner. So I don't know if that plays into him understanding budget, but he's kind of like, we have a budget there. If you don't use it, you lose it. And it's for the saints. And for him, it was like, let's use it. Okay, so we planned on every other activity doing a full dinner, and every other activity was like snacks and whatever. And no, he didn't give us a budget. He just, like, I would call him and like, or text him and say, hey, we're thinking about this. Is it too extravagant, or what do you think? And he's like, no, I love it. How much is it? And adding up, like, roughly in my head, I think we probably spent under $20,000, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 activities last year.
Oh,
And
wow.
we spent under 20,000 for the whole stake. I don't think that's extravagant. And then if your stake's bigger, then you get a bit bigger budget, right?
Yeah.
So, and we weren't, like I said, me and my committee, we weren't extravagant, and we didn't focus on like so many decorations, and so we didn't focus on the fluff, really.
Yeah.
I learned at a younger age, when you focus on the fluff, you miss the point of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we had a couple of things that, like, we bought some of those really cool like bistro lights that you can get at like Sam's Club, and we spent like $200 on them, and we were like, we intend on using these at a lot of activities, because you put some lights up and woo, you have a party.
Yeah.
So
people stay when it gets darker, right?
Yeah. And so we would use those. We found a bounce house guy, he's LDS, and we had a lot of times where I'd be like, all right, I need a bounce house, or I need a 2-story slide, or I need 4 different activities. And he'd be like, you got it. And he'd bring them down, set it up. And then it was like very little for us to do and stuff like that. So anyways, I don't know. I think it had to do with us not being extravagant, and the stake presidency really having a vision of gathering,
Yeah.
So,
and are you potlucking any of the food, or?
We didn't, which was really nice for my committee. So, like, you want me to tell you what the activities were to give you some idea?
Let's break them down.
Okay. So February, we did the DJ and the dance party. You know what was so cool about the dance party?
And this is like in the parking lot, or what?
No, we did it in the gym.
In the church? Okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, we set up as many tables as we could, kind of in a U shape, so that we had the dance in the center, and then the DJ was on the stage. Because we're in we have a pretty big old steak center, because it's an old steak, and it's a big one, and then we set tables up in the primary room, the young women's room, knowing it would be lots of people. It was so many people, but it was fine. And then we have a Spanish ward in our stake. And the best part was the DJ was keeping it going. And then he knew some of the like party Spanish songs. And so he would play those, and then they taught the rest of a bunch of us their dances.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, that's my personality, but anyways.
Yeah.
So March, we kind of kept it a little more chill, and we did bingo night, and we had snacks on all the tables, and then we had prizes, which was like king size candy bars and all that. And then as the night went on, they won like gift cards to restaurants and stuff. And even that whole thing, I think we spent $500 for the whole steak. And we had a different crowd at bingo night. They were a little older.
Nice. You got to consider different demographics as you do.
Absolutely. And then in April, we were like, okay, the weather's getting good. Let's do like out on the field. Our stake center has a little field and a pavilion. So we had our bounce house guy. He brought like the blow up slide. We had cornhole. We had ping pong. We had spike ball. We had horseshoes. We just had a bunch of stuff outside. And then we grabbed pizza from Costco outside. So again, it was like very little setup for the committee. Like what we were like for our committee is we would have a meeting. Everybody was really cool about taking their thing. And we had, we all kind of fell into our little niches. Like, I'll call that, I'll do that, I'll order that on Amazon. And then we would decide what time we were going to show up. And then about, 2 days before the event, I'd text everybody good? Everybody got their stuff? And I just trusted that they would do it. And we just showed up 2 hours early, set it up, and it would go. It was easy.
Yeah.
Then May, we did a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. And luckily, my brother-in-law was the assistant principal at the middle school. And so we were able to book the middle school. And the teenagers came out in droves. They brought their friends. It was 3-on-3. Awesome. And that one, we only had like water and Gatorade. I think we had popsicles too. And then it was like, the dad teams versus the teen teams. And it was a blast because people were getting used to the First Friday idea at this point. So even though some of them weren't playing, they would come and they sat in the bleachers and cheered and watched. And because they knew, First Friday, this is fun. We're going to go and hang out, and so it kind of like caught on. And then In June, we knew that a lot of people would be out of town. So we had a projector and a screen in the gym because it was hot because it's Vegas.
Yep.
We said to everyone, bring a camp chair or a blanket, and we're going to have sandwiches and chips and dinner. And so we kept that pretty chill too. We got like sandwich platters from Sam's Club or something like that. And that was pretty easy. We just set it up. People brought their own chairs. We put the movie on, and it was like out of the heat and pretty chill. July, I love tradition, but I also love to do new things when things get tired. And ever since I was a little girl, we had a pancake breakfast that over the years for 4th of July, it got less and less attended. And I was like, that pancake breakfast is tired.
Yeah.
I mean, I might have made some older members in the stake bugged, but we ended up having a really nice patriotic fireside with some really great, like, veterans that spoke. And then we had a really nice cake and ice cream in the gym after. And then there was some really good music too, like a couple of musical numbers. So that's one thing we're going to do this year, and we're going to make it a little bit bigger. And then we had a big old luau in August. And that one was also like maybe close to 400 people. And we hired this group of dancers. They were fire dancers, performers. And we paid them a little chunk of money out of the budget, and we had the dinner catered. So that again was kind of a setup for the committee, but these dancers came and ran, like they'd teach you like little dancing over here. They had all these little stations set up, and it was really, really kind of cool.
Yeah,
and then all these really awesome Polynesian saints were able to come in and like teach about their culture, and it was a good time. In September, we did a service project it was in conjunction with the 9/11 National Day of Service. And we put together kits for the Homeless Alliance here in Vegas. So we ordered all the things that they required, and then we set them up and did like people would walk by and load the kits. And we had it set up in the different foyers. And then afterwards we had volleyball, live music, and like an ice cream social, just so it was like, just stick around and then we're gonna, whatever. And that was cool actually, because we were able to help the sister in the stake that's in charge of service, and like her calling is like community engagement or something, and interfaith, like community engagement. So she was so happy because we joined her on that. And then in fall, in October, we did Fall Festival, and we had the High Council. This one, we had the High Council cooking burgers, and we did like a live band again, games, face painting. And that one had a coat drive attached to it with the family services in Las Vegas. So, and then hay rides. So to me, it was easy. To other people, they would be like, whoa, this was so much. And I was like, honestly, it wasn't, because everybody had their thing. We all showed up and did our thing and had a fun night,
Yeah. And I love just these, like, this isn't just to have a party for the party's sake. I mean, I love some of these events have the service component with it, the interfaith component. And I imagine you're constantly thinking maybe how to do that type of activity, right?
Yeah. And I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of missionaries about it, and they were getting hyped. They'd be like, oh my gosh, I love First Friday. And some of them would be so funny. They didn't know that like I was the person in charge, and they'd be like, have you heard about First Friday? We're going to bring all of our investigators. Oh, they call them their friends. And I'd be like, that's awesome. And it was a really good place for them to say, hey, we have this activity the first Friday of every month. And so they were able to bring them. And it was really good for that reason too.
And so this is the thing I worry about with activities is like you talk about like you don't make it about the fluff, right? And obviously there's still an investment component. There's still some dynamics to manage and consider. Yep. But I don't know. Sometimes you think of an activity, you think, okay, we have to have table coverings, we have to have centerpieces, we have to. I mean, I don't know the many other things, and then it's easier just to make this, twice a year. The stake does an activity, and we call it good, right? But you got to get rid of the fluff.
was the other thing is I was like, I don't want my committee to be overwhelmed with this. And so when I say we found our niches, like one of the ladies on the committee, she'd be like, okay, I'm going to order all the tablecloths on Amazon. And we would order those plastic ones that you throw away. And
Yeah.
you think about it, we would be like, okay, visually for the luau, order a bunch of bright colors like yellow and hot pink and teal and purple. And we're going to throw them on all the tables randomly. And then we ordered some like bright colored lays too. And
Uh-huh.
we're like, toss a few of those down the middle of the table and call it good. And like, maybe, there are some people that like decorations is their jam, but I
Yeah.
know they're there for like, I don't know, 2 days setting it up. And I'm like, I know that makes some people like so happy and good on them, but like, I didn't want to wear anybody out and I didn't want to wear myself out either. And it wasn't about that. I didn't want to be so worn out that I couldn't walk around and be like, hey, sister so-and-so, are you having a blast? And like,
Yeah.
I didn't, you know what I mean? And so that's why we did do tablecloths and we did do a couple of little things, but not all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And so how about the ward activity, stake activity dynamic? This is the most passive aggressive war since 1820. Is the quiet battle that
totally.
happens between a ward and a stake, right? And it's like,
Oh,
they
totally.
they schedule an activity. We have an activity that night. So,
Yes.
I mean, does anything come to mind with that dynamic?
That's funny because there were some people that were like, it's always like this in the church. They're like boycotting it because they don't
Yeah.
agree with, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was a little bit of that, which is so funny because I've been in the stake forever. So I know a lot of people and I'm like, come on, just come to
Yeah.
the activity. But I think the consistency, I think it was genius to have the consistency because they knew it was First Friday. So plan something else on a different day. And interestingly enough, this year, the stake president was like, okay, we're going a different direction. And I was like, oh, okay. Because, I mean, like, I always had to like make sure my schedule, I wasn't going out of town on the first Friday and this and that. And
Yeah.
so it did get kind of like, oh, here we go. It's First Friday again, but not like heavy on me. I didn't feel like that. But anyways, he goes, okay, it's time for the wards to start gathering again. I feel like we did our job as a stake. We got everybody
Oh,
out. We
okay.
got them going. And he's like, we're not doing that again. I want 3 big activities this year. And I was like, oh, okay,
Ah.
shift gears.
So your stake president used it to sort of jumpstart the gathering. This
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a 10-year plan, right?
Mm-mm. And then he said to me, as you're calling now, I want you to go and train the ward activities person
Oh, I
in
love that.
this whole simplicity thing. He's like, I want
Yes.
you to go and say, you don't have to do fluff, but you do need to plan something that people want to come to. Because that whole thing of like, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes in stakes that are older like this, it gets tired and people are like, well, we don't do anything good because no one comes. And then it's
Uh-huh.
like, well, no one comes because you don't do anything good. So it's like, you got to find that balance there,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so he was like, reach out to the wards, see if they need training. If they don't need training, then you're good. And there were a couple of wards that they were like, no, we got it. And it would be like my friends that were the activities. I'm like, you got it. You're good.
Yeah.
I know, but I didn't want anybody to be overwhelmed. I wanted them to know you can plan something fun that doesn't take a lot of, like stress on you. So
Yeah. And I love that component of making yourself available for ward activities committees and saying, let me help you out. Because to some people like myself, if I had to do that, I'd be like kind of overwhelmed. Like I hate the calculation of feeding people. Like so many people are like,
yeah,
we are going to run out of food. I'm going to be the disgrace of the ward because I ran an activity that ran out of food. And
totally.
so I never
I
know
know.
what to do.
I
So
know.
to have somebody there who's experienced and steps in even from the stake is like, oh, thank you. Yeah, look at my
Yeah.
numbers here. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, should we do this or
Well,
that? Right?
I will say I did have a secret weapon on my committee, and that was one of my best friends who is also the wife of the stake president. So, I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm just putting that
Nice,
out there, but
nice.
she's a queen of food. Like, she loves to throw parties and all that, and she keeps it like good and simple. And so that was kind of her niche. She'd be like, let me call and order the thing, and I'll tell them, and we'll figure it out. And so that would be my advice. Get somebody on your committee that knows what they're doing as far as food goes.
Yeah,
And or she and I would go shopping and we'd like do the math. okay, if we think da, 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 and da, 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 you know, and then we'd go, all right, we're going to get this much. And you know, you always hope and pray that, yeah, you're going to have enough. And we did, for the most part, we did loaves and fishes, you know, but.
And if not, you know, Costco's down the street or whatever, and just go make it happen. So,
Totally.
wow, this is so fascinating. And you sent me some principles here that I want to make sure we hit on. We've probably touched on these a little bit, but the 3 principles are charity, unity, and missionary work. So let's dive in there and see what we can learn. So tell me about charity. How does charity work in all this?
Well, you know, you think about the pure love of Christ and how he gathered everyone. And don't you just love studying the New Testament? You're just like, it's like, sometimes you don't see that, like, he actually gathered everyone on the fringe. That's who he gathered. And when I talked to the stake president last week, and I was like, hey, let's chat a little bit before I jump on this podcast. And he was like, I wanted people to feel like they belong. He's like, everybody wants to feel like they belong. And to me, that's charitable to put a place where people belong. And he said, people are searching for belonging in the world today. They will gravitate to where they feel like they belong. In the name of belonging, Satan draws people away. And then he said, so why do people go to church? To learn, connect, and belong. And so in that regard, it is charitable to try and create an activity where people belong, where the missionaries can bring an investigator and they feel like they belong. And then, you know, his wife, Julie, that's on my committee, I asked her, and she was like, don't you just love that we had somewhere where people could come in a relaxed setting? They're not showing up in their Sunday best. So there's this sense of community. It's kind of a come as you are. Let's chit chat. Let's laugh. That's different than Sunday, you know?
Yeah.
And so that created a sense of unity too. And it was cool because the stake president, he told me, he goes, you know what's crazy? A lot of churches struggled getting their numbers back up to pre-COVID, after COVID. And he's like, I really believe that our First Friday activities, we got back to our pre-COVID numbers so fast. And we had so many baptisms last year too. And he said one of the general authorities was here. Uchtdorf came and did a training in Vegas recently. And he was sitting at a table with President Uchtdorf, and then we call him Elder Uchtdorf now, right?
Right. Yeah.
And some of the general authorities that came with him, and they had done their homework, and so they were sitting next to President Bowen, and they were like, "Hey, what's going on in your stake? Why'd you guys have so many baptisms last year and stuff like that?" And so he said, "Well, let me tell you about 2 things. We have First Friday activity," and he told them all about that, and then we have Centro Hispano, which is the missionaries run it. It's a place where people can come and learn English, get help with employment. They learn all kinds of things there. And there's like all these services, and it's free, and it's at our stake center. And so between Centro Hispano and then First Friday, we're gathering people and we're helping them to feel like they belong and that there's some unity in our stake. We're all working together to do these things, you know? So.
Yeah. Anything else about charity that would be worth mentioning? Did we cover it pretty well?
It was really important to the whole committee. My committee was so awesome. We would have the best, funnest meetings where we would just like laugh and chat. And we were all on the same page. And it was like, all right, if we do this activity, what are the kids doing during the activity? And that's why we would be like, oh yeah, okay, we don't want the parents with these young kids. Okay, let's have a bounce house and let's have that going on while this is going on. And, you know, like all these things. And so it was like, to me, that's charity too, because we were trying to think of everybody. We were like, okay, the teenagers aren't going to come because they already have stuff going on Friday nights. They have football games, they have this and that. And then we're like, okay, let's do a 3-on-3. You know, they'll come to that.
Yeah.
And to me, that was charitable to them too, to like, we see you, we want you to bring your friends. We think you're important. We want to cheer for you. We want, you know. And so I just think it's charitable too, to not forget everybody, to like not plan an activity that you think is neat, but plan an activity that like draws everybody in. And like I said, not everybody came to every activity because the demographic would be like, yeah, I'm not doing that, you know, but
Well, and that's one thing I'm learning from you is that like consider the various demographics, because I think
Mm-hmm.
the basic traditional stake activities or even word activities is like, the picnic, have food there and people can mingle, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but then you get like all the 14-year-olds are like in the corner breaking something, or someone finds a football and they're
Yes.
in the middle of things, or the kids are, parents are looking for their kids. And so I love this, like, we're going to do a 3-on-3 and that's going to draw on the teenagers. We're going to do a
Mm-hmm.
bingo night and that's going to draw in the older demographic, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not making every activity for everyone, and but
Yeah.
just being okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's
Totally.
awesome. All right, what about unity?
I just think that, that whole like come as you are, come and be a part of this, like bring the wards back together as a stake too, because I think sometimes people feel like the stake is, what's the word when you're like, you're not in touch with what's going on in the wards. And so I think, I think that it created unity. Well, one thing that created unity for me for this calling was that as the stake activities director, I was invited to go to the stake reporting meeting every month, which was all the auxiliary presidents, the stake presidency, and the high council.
Uh,
And so we got to bounce ideas. I would like throw out an idea and they'd be like, awesome. And then President Bowen would be like, okay, I need 3 high councilmen. You're going to help with this activity. And they would volunteer. And then it would be like the Relief Society president would be like, hey, can we do a drive in association with this activity to get school supplies since it's the beginning of the school year? And we're like, absolutely. So when I would make the posters that would go at all the buildings for these activities, and then I would put on there, also included a school supply drive. And so like there was unity in the sense that we were all kind of working together and getting these ideas and just really trying to like support one another's callings. And that
yeah,
meeting is so fun for me to be there and see how we all work together.
yeah, because sometimes activities can just be like the cherry on top of everything happening in the stake, right?
Yeah.
And we do a chili cook-off, and that's great,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
keep doing that. But to be in the meeting and to say, no, we're going to help you hit your vision
Mm-hmm.
through our vision, and
Yeah.
that's powerful.
And at the end of the year, too, like we sat as a committee and we were like, okay, we don't want to take away from the ward's traditions. And generally, when you said chili cook off, it reminded me of this.
Yeah.
Generally, everyone has a chili cook off and a trunk or treat, right?
Yep.
So we were like, okay, well, we're going to do an October activity in the beginning, October 1st, but then that's it for the end of the year because we want the wards to still do their trunk or treat. And then they're all going to have like a Christmas activity as well. And so we kind of like hands off towards the end of the year and kind of like, okay, go be with your ward now. And I think that worked out well because everybody was already gathering and had this momentum, and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, now missionary work. I love. I mean, any help we can get with missionary work
yeah.
is well received. So unpack that for us.
Well, for one thing, when you feed people, they are like, you know, connected to you, right?
Yeah.
So, especially like I said, every other month we would have a dinner type thing. And that was really, what's the word? That was really enticing for the missionaries to say, hey, bring your kids and it's free dinner. There's going to be a blow up bounce house thingy. There's going to be games for the kids. And the missionaries loved it. They would be like, I tried to bounce around during the activities too and meet their friends that they had brought. And I just feel like it was a good way for friends of the missionaries to feel comfortable in a casual setting because Sunday's not always comfortable for a friend of the missionaries. It's not. It's like, oh, I don't really fit in here, or everybody looks the same, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I feel like we really tried to take into account like creating a setting like that. It was kind of come as you are.
Yeah. No, and this is like my soapbox when it comes to missionary work, especially in Utah or highly saturated areas of Latter-day Saints, is missionary work doesn't start with like taking the Book of Mormon to your friend across the street, or
Mm-hmm.
inviting them to the temple open house, or inviting them to church. It starts with just the simple conversation at the mailbox, and then inviting them
Mm-hmm.
to the First Friday event, right? And you get them in a church in a more casual setting, they're more likely to be open to that invite when they do, have interest in coming to the church and walking through those doors,
Yeah,
and remembering
totally.
that building, right? So it's
Yeah.
powerful.
And it had a place for members to bring their friends too.
Yeah.
And it would be cool, like when I would see the teenagers walk in, because my kids are all raised now, but I still associate with a lot of the teenagers because I taught seminary a couple years ago. And I was like, I know these kids. I can see this one's not a member, that one's not a member, that one's not a member, and you brought them here. That is cool. And I'm sure it was like, hey, come on, we're going down to the church and they're feeding us for free, and there's going to be volleyball or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that was the other thing. Our stake president, like I said, we have an old stake center, but it's big. And so I was like, can we get some stuff at the stake center? Can we spruce up the stake center in the sense of having like some things that we can use there that are available to us throughout the year? And he was like, yeah, like, what do you mean? I go, like, let's have a ping pong table that stays at the stake center. And let's have a really nice couple of volleyball, um, uh, nets
Net.
and balls and stuff like that stay at the stake center. And he's like, absolutely. And again, that was him seeing the vision and being able to like make some of these purchases that were going to have some longevity,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Powerful. Well, Jenna, all right. In 2 minutes or less, give me we're going to have an episode within an episode. I want your crash course on girls camp in 2 minutes or less. Go.
Okay. Always invite people to girls camp that want to be there, because the old saying, bad apple spoils the bunch, or whatever. 100%. There are plenty of women that love girls camp, and there are some that don't. And if you don't like it, don't come. It's okay. Like, you know what I
Love it.
mean?
Yeah.
And when you get the girls there and you get them away from the world, about by day 2, they're coming around, and it's like they wake up, they're away from their phone and the whole thing, and all of a sudden this magic happens, and then you got them. And a couple of years ago, I heard a general conference talk by the general young men's president, and he said one way to connect with youth is be together with them. So if there's an activity, be in it, do all the things, and give them physical ways to experience heaven. So we always would have like an iron rod experience, or, like something that physically kind of gives them a parallel to the world. And then afterwards have somebody kind of go with them and like break it down and go, what'd you guys think? How'd you feel? How did that relate to your life? And I just die over girls camp. And by the end of the week, you can see it changes lives. And that 1 week, I got it from my mom, actually. And I still have people that come up to me and be like, you're Jill Horton's daughter? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, your mom changed my life when I was 12.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, I know, right?
Yeah.
Girls camps that way. And so I just love it. I just love getting them away from the world and being in the mountains and being in that, anciently speaking, the mountains were the temple of the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's just me. I step on the mountain and it just like overwhelms me. I'm like, oh, we're here. We are here. We are away from the world. We have gone up and we are here. So anyways.
I love it. That's worth the podcast right there, and so much more. That reminded me of another thing I was going to ask you, just as far as like marketing for the stake activities. I mean, obviously the sacrament meeting announcement, which nobody hears. I mean, anything else any other ways or tactics to market a stake activity?
So our stake executive secretary was really awesome with emailing the entire stake. And, now with LDS tools, you have access to that. But I also knew that like not everybody checks their email. I mean, I'm guilty of that. So I got really good at this app called Canva. And it's like a graphic design app.
We use it for leading sales. Yep.
Right. I've gotten really good at it. So I would design a poster, and again, I'm one to use your resources. Find out who knows who and who has what connections to this and that. Well, I found this lady that has a print shop in her house, and she would print me like 11 by 17 sized posters, and I would go and put them in all the buildings. And then she would also shrink it down to, like, she'd cut a sheet of paper in fourths. And so the poster was shrunk down to these little papers. So I would put them in the lobby of the churches with the poster and the flyer. Some people want a flyer. And then our stake executive secretary would email the same flyer to the whole stake, and then they would announce it in sacrament. And I was like, man, we've got to reach them out. There's got to be
Cool.
some way we're getting to everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so I just, right after the first Friday, then I'd start working on the poster for the next and try and get it in the lobby. So people like, oh, cool, we have bingo night coming up or whatever,
Yeah.
you know? So
Awesome.
it just got rolling and rolling.
Yeah. I think no, we need to make a list of some of these resources, because I'm sure many don't realize how awesome Canva is. And there's a few others that are similar, but it's free. I mean, they have a premium option, but
yeah,
you can do a lot with the free as far as creating a flyer or an image to go on a award Facebook group or whatever it is. Like, it's,
well, and
it makes it
mostly
easy.
like you can type in Harvest Festival flyer,
Yeah.
and then you just use that one and change the words.
Yeah. They got some great templates.
I mean, I did that a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Awesome, Jenna. Anything else that we missed or want to make sure we include before we wrap up?
Well, I have to tell you, and I will be fast, what we're doing this year that is, oh my gosh, so cool.
Let's hear it.
Well, it's in the works. So I have been having this feeling that it's so important to have interfaith activities, right? I've been feeling this for a long time, especially during COVID, and there was so much contention. I was like, no, there are so many people on the same page. I have so many friends that belong to other churches, and we are on the same page. We all feel the love of Christ. We need to get together more. So we already had the fiesta that was when I took over the Leading Saints podcast. We already did the fiesta, which was like a big gather everybody. We're going to do the patriotic fireside. And then in the fall, I started getting this big idea. I was like, okay, I want to have a stage down at the park, like a good stage, good sound system, good lighting. And we're in Vegas. I know a lot of people that work on the strip. I'm like not afraid to call and, hey, do you know anybody that knows this or can do this or donate this or whatever? And anyways, I wanted to get a good venue and then invite other churches to come and play their worship music. So it'd be kind of like an interfaith music festival.
I'm driving down, Jenna. This is fantastic.
Well, so I stumbled upon this place called the Clark County Amphitheater. And if you are familiar with Vegas, it's down off of like Fremont Street near the Smith Center. And it is this huge outdoor venue that has a stage, lighting, grassy area, lights across the grass. I was like, what is this? What is this? So I called Clark County and I'm like, how do I book this? What is, call the stake president. He's just like, oh yeah, let's do it. Well, Vegas has several music festivals like Life is Beautiful. I can't remember the name of the other one, but where it's like a 3-day festival and all these artists come. And I'm like, what if we could get an all-day musical festival like that, where we invite all these other churches to bring like their like worship bands, praise Jesus worship bands. And we have a schedule and it's like every half an hour, the band changes or whatever. We have food trucks. Cause then it's like, you can just invite the food truck and they come and make money. And you're like, that wasn't hard for me. I just invited you and you just came.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then we just book it. Well, anyways, the Lord works in mysterious ways, right? All of a sudden, all these people are coming out of the woodworks. And I find out that this place was built as it's like the baby of the county commissioners. They built it for community engagement.
Holy cow.
So I write this email about, hey, this will create unity amongst faithful members of the Las Vegas Valley. This will create community engagement. Let's get the county commissioners to MC the event. And as an entry fee, it's a food drive. So everybody bring canned food or homeless kit things. And so far I've been able to kind of work with different people, and it's getting in the right people's ear. And we're getting closer to planning that in the fall. And then once I've secured the venue, then I'm going to go and I have a lot of friends at other churches, but then I'm going to go and be like, all right, You want to be a part of this? Because it's
Yeah.
going to be cool, you know?
Okay, you got to keep us posted on that. That'll be fun
I
to
will.
see how
I
that
will.
goes.
I
I love
will.
the
Yeah.
idea.
It's going to be cool.
So let's last question I have for you is as you reflect on your time as a stake activities director, which is pretty much a stake activities leader. How has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
It's okay. So I've been a member of the church my whole life. And in the last couple of years, I've really been on this journey of kind of deconstructing all the things that I thought I was, like checking all the boxes and realizing that it's not about the doing, it's about the becoming. And in being this leader over these stake activities, it's really taught me like, oh, okay, this is helping me to become someone that loves everybody. This is helping me to become someone that really cares about people belonging. This is helping me to become someone that has a new set of eyes and ears that is like, I see you. I want to create a space for you and I want to sit with you. And I want you to know that our church, everybody belongs here. There's a place for everybody here. And so it's really helped me to change my leadership style to where um, I'm not catering to the normal crowd, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm really trying to like look outside the box and gather all of us. That's not to say that the traditional things that we've done in the past don't have value too, because they do. It's just that let's like think outside the box and add on new thoughts with our traditional ways.